it's Writing Wednesday, and it really is again because what with Christmas and year-end book contest stuff and everything, it's been a few weeks since I've done a regular Writing Wednesday, and today's episode is called Something Old, Something New. Don't worry, I'm not getting married, I already did that. The Something Old, Something New refers to something in my writing life that is both old and new and also really awesome that I want to tell you about. But speaking of new and awesome, before I get to that, I have a new t-shirt and it's awesome. It's actually possibly the nerdiest t-shirt I've ever worn in this series, which is amazing. It's called The Witch in the Fireplace. It's a Doctor Who and Harry Potter mashup by artist Karen Hallion, and the way I got it is Emma fell in love with the shirt and I ordered it for her, but I was unsure of the sizing, so I ordered 2 different sizes, and then when it came and the smaller one fit her, she very kindly said I could wear the larger one, which is great. I guess in a way, since I told her she could have it back if she ever outgrew the other one, it's also something borrowed, and hers is blue. But anyway, that's not what I came to talk about. But you can look at it. It's beautiful. Check out Karen Hallion's work. It's amazing. So if you know anything about my work, or if you watched a video I did a while back called Draw My Writing Life, you know that some years ago I released a book called The Violent Friendship of Esther Johnson. And this was a really, really important book for me for a lot of reasons in my writing career. First of all, because it was the first, and to date the last, book I had published by a really big-name publisher, Penguin Books Canada. But even before this book was accepted for publication, and it had a really long and arduous journey to publication, even before any of that happened, it was kind of a turning point for me because I had been trying to figure out what direction to go in my writing. And one day, I was literally walking along in a park or something, maybe talking to someone. I can't really remember the location, but I remember I was on a walk when I thought, you know, what I love to read is historical fiction. Maybe I should actually write some historical fiction. And as soon as I had that thought, I thought of Esther Johnson. In case you're one of the bazillions of people who don't know who Esther Johnson is, she was a real woman. This isn't her, this is a stock picture that Penguin used for the cover. But anyway, she was a real woman who was born in the late 1600s and lived into the early 1700s. She didn't live a really long life. She died in her 40s. She was always in poor health. She wrote a little bit, but most of what she wrote has been lost. She knew some famous people, but really the only reason we know anything about her historically is because she was best friends with the writer Jonathan Swift. And the ironic thing about her is that the people who do know about her, which are mainly people who are Swift fans, mainly know her and talk about her by the name that Swift used when writing about her in poetry. He gave her the name Stella, and that was his convention. He used to assign classical-sounding names to the women that he wrote about. Swift and Stella, or Esther as she was always really called in her lifetime, had a very weird relationship. It began as a kind of mentoring sort of thing where he was the secretary in the house that she grew up with, a nobleman's house where she was the housekeeper's daughter. Her status in the household was kind of unusual. She was given a lot of favor and privilege, and it was sometimes suggested that she might have been the illegitimate daughter of her mother's employer. Nobody really knows the truth about that. But Esther was certainly given an education that exceeded what would have been normal for a woman of her time and class, and she developed a very close friendship with Jonathan Swift, to the point that when he moved to Ireland to pursue his career as a clergyman, she went with him. And lived not with him, never lived with him, lived with her female companion Rebecca Dingley in Ireland for the rest of her life, always as Swift's close friend, his secretary. She transcribed and edited his work. There's evidence that probably everything he wrote, or almost everything, he showed to her before he ever published it. They had this extremely close relationship, and sometime after her death, a story began to circulate that at some point they had been secretly married to each other but had never lived as man and wife. When I first stumbled across this story when I was doing a college course on Swift, it absolutely fascinated me. And the thing with this college course was I didn't even like Jonathan Swift that much. I didn't like his writing. I don't even really like Gulliver's Travels. I hate to admit that as someone who's written a book in which Swift is a character, but I'm not a huge Jonathan Swift fan, although I admire the fact that what he did well. But what fascinated me was this relationship and the weirdness and the tenderness of the poems that he wrote for her, and the strangely asexual yet intimate nature of the relationship. Everything about it fascinated me. I've always been really interested in the stories of women like this. Women who trailed along like tails behind comets in the wake of famous men, who presumably had dreams and passions and, I guess, gifts and talents of their own, but who are remembered only as the recipient of poems or letters, or as a character in somebody else's story. So it was a really absorbing thing for me all those years ago to do the research into the little we know of her life and the great deal we know of Swift's life and of the time, and give her a voice and let her tell her own story. And even though in many ways commercially this is probably the least successful book I've ever written, it still is dear to my heart in a really, really big way. So it went out of print some time ago, and due to the wonders of the self-publishing age, an author who has a book that was published by a publishing house that has now gone out of print and the copyrights reverted to you can re-release it themselves. So in this age of e-reading, if you are interested in what I think is a pretty good historical novel about a real woman who I've reimagined as a fictional character, you can go for now to Amazon.com or Amazon.ca. Soon I'll be making it available on other platforms too. Search for The Violent Friendship of Esther Johnson. I've deliberately priced it quite affordably. I'm not really doing this to make money off it. I'm not expecting to make a lot out of it. I'm mainly doing it for people who like my work and would like to be able to get hold of this book and haven't yet, or just people who like good historical fiction and want to try something new. So I'm really excited to be able to say that my something old, The Violent Friendship of Esther Johnson, is now something new, available at Amazon as an ebook. And I hope you pick it up and read it and enjoy it.